She didn't leave because you weren't good enough. She left because you didn't know when to go silent and disappear. What makes a man lose his value isn't failure in love, it's how he reacts to the pain. You weren't destroyed by her leaving. You were destroyed by how you kept holding on, stretching the pain, and slowly tearing yourself apart just to cling to what already walked away. It's not your words that keep her up at night, it's your absence. A man who knows when to be silent becomes someone the world searches for. The right silence isn't just emotional discipline, it's a psychological strategy. It's what makes her replay the story alone, tortured by thoughts you'll never explain. A man doesn't lose his attraction by being left. He loses it by staying where he's no longer respected. Disappearing isn't running, it's transforming. When you step away from the board, you're not surrendering, you're building an empire she no longer has access to. Welcome to Stoic Writ, where weakness is buried, and a stronger version of you is reborn. This isn't a video to help you get her back. It's the manual for making sure you never need her again. No sugar-coated promises. No vague advice, just 10 cold, brutal truths crafted for the man who's ready to stop chasing and start rebuilding. If you've ever loved, hurt, or been broken, what you're about to hear isn't advice. It's a wake-up order. A relentless blueprint that takes you from broken to unshakable, from dependent to powerful, from the one left behind to the one no one dares to lose again. Let's begin. These are the 10 ruthless, but necessary, principles every man must embrace to disappear like a god. No goodbyes, no explanations, just a silence so loud it echoes forever in the mind of the one who once took you for granted. 1. Feel the pain once, then rise. A man doesn't fall because of pain. He falls because he doesn't know how to rise from it. When she walked away, it wasn't her absence that destroyed you. It was the emptiness you refused to fill with your own strength. It was the nights you kept replaying the same questions. Why? It was the memories you let strangle your mind like a noose around your soul. But hear this clearly. Pain doesn't come to punish you. It comes to upgrade you. It's not your enemy. It's your teacher. And if you don't learn from this fall, you'll stay at the bottom, repeating the same mistakes with a different face, a different name, but the same ending. A real man doesn't run from pain, nor does he drown in it. He faces it like a warrior on the battlefield. He lets it burn, cut, and crush him, but only once. Once is enough to understand. Once is enough to remember. Then he moves forward, not because he forgot, but because he refuses to live as someone chained to a moment that's already passed. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. You thought she was the one. You built your world around her. You gave her the role of making you feel complete. And when she left, it felt like you lost everything. But the truth is, you didn't lose her. You lost the illusion that she was everything. What's hurting you isn't her absence. It's the story you told yourself about who she was supposed to be." A strong man doesn't pretend nothing happened. He doesn't fake smiles or bury his wounds. He sits with the pain. He stares it down. He looks that broken version of himself in the eye and says, "I see you, but you do not control me." Pain only teaches those who are willing to learn, not those who keep running from it. You can't heal your heart by diving into distractions, chasing shallow connections, or scrolling through the past. That only prolongs the suffering. But when you sit in silence and finally face the truth, you'll hear the message clearly. You need to change. Not to win her back, but to never lose yourself again. If you've ever stayed up all night for someone who doesn't even think about you anymore, if you've ever tortured yourself over something you should have let go of long ago, then now is the time to end that cycle. Let yourself feel the pain. Feel it completely, honestly, and then rise, not with eyes hoping she'll return, but with eyes locked on a future where no one can walk away with your worth ever again, because you've chosen yourself. That's the strongest comeback a man can make. No crying, no revenge, just becoming so powerful, so grounded, that the one who hurt you no longer even qualifies to exist in the world you're building. And when that moment comes, you'll know you've won, in silence, in discipline, and in the rebirth of a man who doesn't chase, he evolves. 2. Silence speaks louder than anger. You think you need to say it all. That if you just had the chance to pour your heart out, to show her how deeply she hurt you, maybe she'd understand. Maybe she'd come back, but that's the biggest trap. She wants a reaction. She expects rage. She's waiting for your breakdown. A long emotional text. A late-night phone call with a trembling voice. Because in that scenario, she still has power. But when you choose silence, you don't just refuse to play the game. You burn down the stage. No tears, no accusations, no explanations, just total, deliberate absence. And that, more than anything else, confuses her. Silence is not surrender. It's the ultimate form of emotional control. It's the moment you stop trying to rewrite the story and let her live in the ending she created. Understand this. The human mind hates empty space. When there are no answers, it builds its own. Is he hurting? Why isn't he reacting? Has he already moved on? Is he with someone else? And it's those questions that become the sharpest blade, not because you inflicted the pain, but because she did, and now she's left alone with it. In dark psychology, this is called the vacuum effect. When you offer no signals, no closure, no emotional breadcrumbs, you create a psychological void, one that drives the other person to fill it with anxiety, regret, and obsessive thought. In Stoicism, this silence is the highest demonstration of self-mastery. A powerful man isn't the one shouting to be heard. He's the one who hears, who feels, who understands, and still chooses not to react. Not because he's empty, but because he's in control. You want her to feel the loss? Then don't let her see your pain. Show her nothing, no messages, no signs, no presence. Because when a man can disappear without a word, without a scene, without needing a dramatic exit, that isn't retreat. That's a statement, a silent declaration that says, I no longer belong in this story. Anger is instinct. Silence is power. Anyone can yell, but not everyone has the strength to remain quiet and still leave a lasting echo. When you stay silent, you don't need to win the argument. Your absence is the message. And if she once thought you would crumble from heartbreak, let that silence prove her wrong. Let it show her that the man she lost wasn't weak, he was simply done. And the silence he left behind? That speaks louder than anything he could have ever said in anger. 3. Stop explaining yourself. Every time you try to explain yourself to someone who already turned their back on you, you're not clarifying your worth, you're lowering it. You turn your loyalty into a justification, your love into a defense, and your dignity into a negotiation. But a real man doesn't play that game. He doesn't beg to be understood. He doesn't fight to prove something that should have been obvious. He speaks once, he acts once, and then he goes silent. Those who understand, stay. Those who don't, let them walk away. She knows how good you were to her. She remembers every time you showed up, every time you forgave, every time you stayed when it hurt to stay. And still, she left. That tells you everything, not because she forgot your value, but because she was convinced you wouldn't dare let go. That you'd keep texting, keep calling, keep pleading your case like love needed approval to be real. But the truth is, real love doesn't need a debate. And real value doesn't live in words, it lives in your actions. And in your silence when you're no longer respected. Don't argue with someone who's already decided you're no longer worth respecting. Don't try to reach someone who ignored you when you were right in front of them. Don't pour your heart into messages hoping she'll finally get it. That's not strength, that's surrender. And you were not born to beg for love. You were born to be known as a man of principle, a man who speaks once and lets his presence, or his absence, say everything else. In this world, the most forgettable men are the ones who are always available, always explaining, always seeking to be understood. But people don't remember the ones who say too much. They remember the ones who disappear and leave silence behind that echoes. They respect those who don't explain their worth, they embody it. Even when walking away. When you stop explaining, you reclaim your power. When you walk away from conversations that go nowhere, you're not quitting, you're declaring, I don't need you to define me. And that's when the power dynamic shifts. Not because you changed her mind, but because you outgrew the need to be heard. Men don't chase understanding, they stand in conviction, not with long texts, not with emotional speeches, but with decisive action. You owe no one an explanation for being loyal, honest, or real. And once you realize that, you won't need validation, you'll just need forward motion, with the calm, steady energy of a man who knows he doesn't need to be understood to be valuable. 4. The law of indifference. There's a kind of power that makes no sound, doesn't raise its voice, and doesn't walk away in anger. It's when you can look at the woman who once made your heart race and feel absolutely nothing. No hatred, no longing, no attachment, just nothing. That's not coldness. That's complete freedom. A state where your emotions are no longer tied to her gaze, her silence, or her sudden messages. This is the law of indifference, where a man stops reacting and starts regaining control. Indifference isn't pretending not to care. It's the shift from emotional dependency to emotional mastery. It's when you stop asking, "What is she thinking?" and start asking, "What do I want for my life?" It's the moment you no longer hope she'll return, apologize, or realize your worth, because you've already realized it yourself. When you become indifferent, you don't play mind games. You don't post cryptic messages. You don't stay online hoping she'll notice. You simply disappear, not to hurt her, but to reposition yourself back where you belong, at the center of your own life. A man who once loved deeply will struggle to become indifferent, but this doesn't mean he never cared. It means he cared enough to know that anyone who walks away so easily was never meant to be held onto through weakness. When she no longer has control over your emotions, when her hey doesn't send a rush of confusion. When her silence no longer rattles your peace, that's when the power shifts. Not because you won, but because you evolved. Stoicism teaches that our emotions should never be built on praise or rejection. Compliments shouldn't elevate you, and ignorance shouldn't break you. When you understand that, you start living in alignment with your own values, not trying to impress. Not seeking validation. She can leave, stay silent, or even come back, but you're no longer pulled in either direction. You don't hate her, you don't blame her, and you definitely don't wait for her. You just don't need her anymore. And that simple lack of need speaks louder than any speech or promise ever could. You don't become indifferent to get revenge. You become indifferent because you've let go. Let go of the old script, the emotional roller coaster, the exhausting pattern of chasing someone who only responds when they fear they've lost you. You've chosen stability over chaos, peace over drama, progress over pursuit, and when she senses that distance, not from your words, but from your presence, she'll start to wonder. She'll start to regret. She'll start to panic, but by then, you've already gone too far to turn back. Not because you can't, but because you don't want to anymore. That is the peak of indifference. No bitterness, no resentment, just freedom, earned, owned, and unshakable. 5. Be her mirror, not her pet. Every time she pulls away and you chase after her, you're not just losing your value, you're teaching her that her behavior carries no consequence. Every time you forgive without an apology, every time you stay after being disrespected, you send a silent message. I will always be here, no matter how you treat me. But you weren't born to be someone's obedient pet, wagging your tail for scraps of attention. You were made to be a mirror. One that reflects exactly what's given to you. No more, no less. If she turns cold, you don't run warmer. If she withdraws, you don't step closer. If she goes silent, you don't rush to fill the void. You mirror her, not to play childish games, but to stand by a clear principle. I don't invest where I'm not respected. This isn't about power plays. It's about teaching through presence or absence. When you stop reacting the way she expects, she's forced to sit with her own choices. There's no one left to blame. No emotional safety net. That's when she feels the same emptiness you once carried alone, and now she has to face it alone. A real man doesn't hand out affection as a reward for ungratefulness. He doesn't beg for appreciation. He doesn't stay just to prove he's patient. When disrespected, he doesn't argue. He simply leaves, quietly, firmly, and without looking back, because he knows that sometimes the loudest message isn't shouted, it's felt in the silence after he's gone. Psychology makes it clear. People only change when staying the same becomes uncomfortable. When you keep showing up despite being mistreated, you erase the boundaries she should have been forced to confront. But when you vanish, not to punish, but to protect your worth, you send a shockwave through her reality. She won't remember the times you tried to explain. She'll remember the time you didn't. The time you stopped reacting. The moment she realized you weren't coming back. Be a mirror, not a cushion. Let her actions shape your response. If she brings chaos, bring distance. If she loses respect, lose interest. A man doesn't need to win every conversation. He just needs to win the battle of staying true to his values. And when she finally looks back, what haunts her won't be the words you said. It'll be the version of you she lost because of the way she treated you. 6. Build your fortress. Her leaving wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something far greater. Pain didn't show up to destroy you. It came to wake you up. No more waiting, no more texts to send, no more wondering if she still thinks about you. All that's left is silence, a cold, empty space. But within that silence lies your greatest opportunity, the chance to rebuild everything. Not to prove anything to her, but to create a version of yourself that no one can walk away from again. This is when you begin building your fortress. Every ounce of heartbreak becomes a brick. Every time you choose silence over reaction, you lay another stone in the foundation of your discipline. The gym becomes your sanctuary. Your habits, your work, your routine, these are your walls. You're not building to get her attention. You're building so you never again have to lower your standards just to feel wanted. This is the process of turning pain into power. Turning loss into the blueprint for a life that cannot be shaken. You used to be the one who sent the last message. The one who waited in silence. The one who overlooked disrespect just to hold on to whatever warmth was left. But that man is gone. And from that loss, a new man is born, not dependent, not emotional, not desperate, but grounded, sharp, and unshakably focused. He doesn't wait to be chosen. He chooses himself, every single day. In psychology, they call this identity transformation, when the pain becomes too unbearable to carry. You don't fix the old self. You bury him, and then, you rebuild, stronger, smarter, calmer. You no longer chase validation. You become the kind of man whose worth is defined by who he is, not by who accepts him. You reach a point where someone's absence no longer alters your direction. You've grown too powerful for that. When she left, yes, you lost something, but you also gained something far more valuable, a doorway to rebirth. No one else will walk through that door for you. No applause will push you forward. Only you. You get up each morning and put in the work. You eat with intention. You train your body. You build your wealth. You sharpen your mind. You become the man even you are proud to face in the mirror. And if one day she returns, and maybe she will, she won't recognize the man standing before her. Because the version she once took for granted no longer exists. The man in front of her now doesn't need to be loved. He's become untouchable to anything unworthy of him. That's your fortress, built from silence, reinforced with discipline, guarded by self-respect. No one enters unless you open the gate, and no one tears it down again. Not because your heart is closed, but because the life you've built is too solid, too sacred, to be shaken by an old wind. 7. Never break the no-contact rule. She left, and silence wrapped around both of you like a heavy curtain. Then one day, you pick up your phone and type, just checking to see if you're okay. A short message, harmless, right? But that isn't care, it's a step backward. Every time you break the no-contact rule, you're not just delaying your healing. You're dragging yourself back into the same loop where you were once ignored, disrespected, and reduced to someone begging for a response that never meant enough. Silence is the language of the strong, not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand that saying anything won't change what's already done. It'll only expose the wounds you're working hard to seal. Your silence isn't emptiness, it's pressure. It's a declaration louder than words. I'm choosing myself. She might not read your thoughts, but she'll feel the void you left. And that void will echo with questions and regrets she can't escape. In psychology, silence creates what's known as emotional uncertainty. The brain hates ambiguity. It starts building stories, imagining reasons, scrambling for meaning. Why hasn't he reached out? Has he really moved on? Is he with someone else now? And those unanswered questions do more damage than 1,000 texts ever could. When you don't explain, don't respond, don't reach, you're not being passive. You're becoming powerful. No contact is not a tactic to win her back. It's a boundary, a bold line between who you were and who you're becoming. It's a reminder that your value no longer lives in the space she once occupied. A mature man doesn't let emotion dictate action. He doesn't let missing someone become a reason to betray his own growth. He moves with logic, with discipline. He knows that one message won't bring clarity, it'll reopen wounds. And he's already bled enough. Stay silent long enough, and something powerful happens. You stop wanting to text. Not because you hate her, but because you've forgiven her. Forgiven yourself. Forgiven the weaker parts of you that once reached out when you should have let go. And when that message from her finally shows up, I miss you, or, how have you been? You'll look at it and feel the strongest thing a man can feel. Nothing at all. No urge, no need, no rush. Just a quiet nod in your mind. I've moved on. That's the power of silence. Not used as a weapon, but as freedom. Not to make her miss you, but to remember who you are. And this time, you won't fold, because you've learned to honor the principle even when your heart begs to break it. That's not detachment. That's evolution. That's the man who doesn't chase closure. He becomes it. 8. Let her live with her decision. She chose to leave. It wasn't an accident, and no one forced her hand. It was a conscious, deliberate decision. She didn't slip and delete you from her life. She walked away with full awareness, closed the door behind her, and left you standing in the quiet, staring at questions that would never be answered. And the worst thing you could possibly do after that is to be the comfort she runs back to when the emptiness sets in. You weren't born to be the emotional crutch for someone who once left you to bleed alone. When you try to make her feel better about choosing to walk away, you rob her of the very lesson she needs to learn. You soften the blow of a consequence she created for herself. But adults live with their choices. And if her choice was to let go of a man who gave his all, then regret is the weight she must carry, not you. Don't send messages checking in. Don't drop subtle lines just to remind her you're still there. Don't be the umbrella when she's the one who stepped out from under your shelter. You weren't made to ease the guilt of someone who dismissed your value. You were made to become irreplaceable, and that version of you doesn't hold hands with those who let go. The more you stay silent, the more you withdraw with purpose, the louder your absence becomes. You don't need to chase fairness. You don't need to reclaim what was yours. Just let the silence speak. She'll remember, not because you reminded her, but because you're no longer there. Regret doesn't grow when you try to keep someone close. It blooms when they realize what they lost can't be touched again. And that realization only happens when you disappear completely. When you no longer try to be the hero in a story you were written out of. When you walk away with your head held high, no ending. No explanation, no cameo role in her drama. That's when she starts to understand that her decision to leave wasn't just a passing mistake, it was the final chapter of the best thing she ever had. Let her live with that choice. No rescue, no saving, no cleaning up the wreckage. Let her sit in the silence you left behind. Let her feel the absence that once held her up. Let her learn that real love isn't something you stash away and expect to return to when it's convenient. And you'll be the lesson. Not through bitterness, not through anger, but by being completely gone. You don't hate her. You don't even forgive her. You've simply moved beyond needing to return. Because this time, you're not the one being left behind. This time, you're the one who finally woke up. 9. They always come back, but you've gone too far. They always come back, maybe in a few weeks, a few months, or even a few years. At first, it's a casual message, "Hey, how have you been?" Then come the subtle questions wrapped in nostalgia. Because when your silence lasts long enough, when the void you left starts to feel suffocating, they can't help but turn around. And when they do, they realize something unsettling. You weren't like the others. You didn't chase. You didn't plead. You didn't fight to be remembered. You just disappeared, and that silence now screams louder than any words ever could. That's when the panic creeps in. Not because they truly miss you, but because they realize they lost control. They thought you'd always be there. That if one day they felt empty, they could return to where you used to wait. But when they try, what greets them is not the same man they left behind. The man who once wrote long messages, who stayed awake in silence, who repeated, "Why?" to himself at 2 a.m. That version no longer exists. He died the moment you chose to rebuild yourself from the wreckage they left behind. You don't go back, not out of anger, not out of pride, but because you've simply gone too far forward. You've walked a path they're no longer part of. You feel nothing, no longing, no desire to revive what's already faded. Because in the silence they gave you, you found your own voice. In the void they created, you filled it with discipline, direction, and strength. And now, when they look at you, they don't just see the man they once knew, they see someone they can't reach anymore. Someone they no longer have access to. Their return isn't a second chance, it's confirmation. Proof that your silence, your distance, and your refusal to react made you unforgettable. And that's the beauty of it all. The one who walked away comes back, only to realize you're no longer standing where they left you. There's no bitterness, no cold shoulder, just indifference. You don't need their apology. You don't crave closure, because you've already finished the journey they abandoned halfway. When they say, "Do you ever think about us?" you might smile. Not because you want to go back, but because you've grown strong enough not to. Because now, your focus is forward, where the man you've become no longer needs the past to feel complete. And that, right there, is the victory. Quiet, unapologetic, no grand announcements, just one undeniable truth. You didn't go back, because you no longer belong in the place you once had to fight to escape. 10. Disappear like a god. When a man is truly done, not out of anger, not from heartbreak, but done, he doesn't yell, beg, or make a dramatic exit. He simply disappears. No noise, no warning, no signs, just silence. And in that silence, he leaves behind something far more powerful than any final words, a void. One that's cold, deep, and unforgettable. His disappearance isn't a retreat, it's the ultimate act of self-control. It's not that he doesn't care. It's that he no longer sees value in being present where he's been taken for granted. He doesn't walk away to hurt anyone. He walks away because he understands. He gave it all, his time, loyalty, vulnerability, met with indifference, disrespect, or sudden change. So now, he withdraws, not as a move of revenge, but of preservation. No cryptic posts, no final messages, no glances back. He leaves quietly, like stepping through a door only he had the strength to open. And in that complete absence, his presence becomes legendary, not because of what he said before leaving, but because of everything he chose not to say. In dark psychology, nothing holds more power than someone who vanishes completely without leaving a path to follow. The human mind struggles with unfinished stories. When you remain silent forever, they continue the narrative in their own heads. They rewrite moments. They haunt themselves with what-ifs. That's when you become myth, not memory. Not because you tried to be unforgettable, but because your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. Stoicism teaches us that true power is mastery over ourselves, not others. When you are strong enough to walk away in peace, without noise or reaction, without clinging to explanations, you've evolved beyond the chaos. That's not escape, that's elevation. You no longer exist in the same emotional frequency as the people who once hurt you. You've risen, not to prove them wrong, but because you've outgrown the need to be right in their eyes. And when she finally looks back, if she ever does, she won't see a man who stormed off in rage. She'll see a sacred silence, an empty space no one else could fill. She'll understand that you didn't walk away to be remembered. You walked away because returning was never an option. And that is what makes you unforgettable, not through drama, not through pride, but through calm, quiet power, through a vanishing act so pure, so complete, that it echoes louder than any goodbye ever could. That's how real men end chapters. Not with a bang, but with divine silence. Not to be called back, but to ensure their name lives on in the silence they left behind. Disappear like a god, not for revenge, but for legacy. Closing statement. You've just walked through 10 powerful principles not meant for the faint of heart. This isn't theory. This is a weapon. A blueprint that takes you from heartbreak to dominance. From the man who was once left behind, to the man no one dares to lose twice. If you've ever loved deeply and hurt even deeper, then what you just heard wasn't advice, it was a wake-up call. Remember, real men don't chase. They don't beg for closure. They don't turn pain into performance. They go silent. They rebuild, they evolve, they disappear like gods, without noise, without chaos, leaving behind only a void that no one else can fill. If you're in the middle of that storm right now, lift your head, not to find someone else, but to see the version of yourself that's finally rising. No one's coming to save you. You are the hero you've been waiting for. Become the man she once wished you would be, but this time, not for her, for you. If this video hit something deep inside you, hit that like button, share it with a brother who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any message designed to make you unshakable. Let your silence become a legend. Let your disappearance become a declaration. And live like you no longer need to be understood, because you finally understand yourself. See you in the next video.